Good to see you all. Glad to have you today for our last webinar of the year. I won't even make a comment about what this year felt like to 2020. I'll just let y'all think about that. But we've made it through, and we are rolling the end of the year with a really great presentation. I think you're going to enjoy this. It's the 5 planks of door opening success. Personally, as a person who spent time in sales and also in marketing, it was always agonizing to me to figure out how to get to the people that I wanted, even if I researched and figured out who they are. And we might have a lot of tools today. LinkedIn seems to be helpful, but boy, am I barraged by LinkedIn. But Karen's going to give us some insight. So let me just do a little bit of opening stuff around ISBM while everybody gets kind of settled in. We've only got about half our participants in right now. So let me just remind you who you are. We are ISBM. We were founded in 1982 as a collection of companies and academics that were interested in developing more knowledge in B2B marketing. And at that point in time, hardly was done. And even at this point in day, we still have hardly much research being done in B2B. Almost all the research is in B2C, and it's focused where we want to put it for our memberships. So if you join us, you'll be helping us direct where we put our research dollars and do our research energy. Today, as I mentioned, Karen's going to be with us, Karen Kopp. Karen is the chief door opener because she gets her clients in the door with their prospects. Her senior business developers are known as Kopp door openers because they can find the right opportunities and secure initial meetings for their clients. Today, she's going to share some secrets with us, which I think you're going to find fascinating and also hopefully helpful to your teams, whether you're trying to get marketing information from folks or you're trying to help your sales teams get to the right places. She's a best-selling author. She has gotten her MBA from NYU's Stern School of Business and her undergraduate degree from Babson. She's a member of many, many organizations, including the Entrepreneurs Organization, the National Speakers Association, and Enterprising Women. And she has been, and her business, growing rapidly over the last years. I think, again, you're going to find her fascinating. She's going to give you her contact information later if you'd like to follow up, but I hope you'll enjoy this. So meanwhile, how do we interact? It's been 20 months of this, so maybe you're all familiar with Zoom, but I'll just tell you one more time. If you're new to us, the way that we interact is Karen would love to hear questions from you as the presentation goes forward, but you're going to type them into the bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen where it says Q&A. I'll be watching the Q&A folder for any questions that come in, and I'll interrupt Karen as it seems to be appropriate to ask her a question. If somehow your question has missed where she is, I'll hold it to the end and I'll pose it to her then. But please just type your questions as you think of them. Even if you think of them early, I'm just going to watch them and I'll field them to her as we go. We're going to be together for about an hour. Always we have a question, can I get a copy of this? Yes, the answer will be yes, you can get a copy of this. On ISBM.com, you'll be able to go to watch this recording again in about 24 hours after it posts, and it will be up there for 30 days. If you're an ISBM member, then you will have access to it forever in B2B Pulse. And the slides that go with this, Karen has said she'll be able to share those with folks. If you've registered yourself and you've not shared your registration to somebody else, and so it's not your name, but if you registered, you'll also get a reminder of where to find this after the event. Here's our leadership team. I'm there with a really nice picture that I need to update, but who hasn't been there? Rand Mendez is my partner and executive director and supports the membership. Becky Williams is our curriculum director. And then behind the scenes, we have Stefan, Ralph, and Gary, all in the academic side. And then Lori Nicolini actually does all of the work. We just think of things for her to do, and she does them. We also have over 30 fellows. These are faculty at prestigious universities around the world who are the leaders in their areas of expertise in B2B marketing, and they are all supporting us. So our fellows help us with our research. Our fellows help us with our questions that we get from membership. And if you are an ISBM member and you have a question, we're going to figure out how to get you a good answer, and it might be that we just put you together with a fellow for a short consulting visit. We have lots of member firms. Here's some nice logos of everybody there. And we'd love if you aren't up there and you want to join us, just let us know. And I want to remind you that this past year, we instituted something called the ISBM B2B Mastery Track Series. I won't go into great detail about this, but after many years of offering very excellent courses from individual faculty at various universities. We basically build our own curriculum outside of any university by using the best of the best from wherever they are. After offering these individual courses, we put them all together to form kind of a master experience in B2B marketing. So if you're new to B2B marketing and you need the basics, it's in there. If you need to get beyond the basics and into the organizational structure and the processes that you should be using in your career, or if you're running an organization and you'd like to have that end-to-end knowledge, this track series is amazing. You can also take courses inside the track individually. And so I invite you to take a look what we have on the website. We'll be running that track again starting in February of 22, and it will run for 4 months. So you're not taking it away from the office, you're in the office, you're working on your projects, and you're working on your projects inside the education program. And always, everything we have is on our library. I hope you'll go take a look at us there. So it looks like we've gotten most people registered and in now. I'm going to just mention that Karen's going to be speaking to us. If you have a problem, feel free to reach out to Lori Nicolini or at myself, or type something to us in the chat window or in the Q&A box. I'll be seeing that. And I'm going to turn this over to Karen.
Thank you, Lynn, and welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you're here to join us to learn about the 5 planks of door opening success. Our company, Kopp Consulting, gets our clients in the door with their prospects for the first meeting when the prospects are at an executive level. So all of the information that I'll be sharing with you today comes from aggregating the data from our door openers who are senior level business developers and the success that they're having every day for clients across industries. One of the things that people say all the time when they hear me give this presentation and then a month later or 2 months later, they tune in again to hear this presentation is that what's working is changing, especially since the pandemic hit. Every 3 to 4 weeks, what's working is changing. So the presentation you're going to see today is going to be a little different than the presentation people saw a couple of weeks ago because I'm updating things as we learn what's working from our business developers who are doing this for our clients. I'm adding it into the seminars that our people see. So I just wanted you to know that this is cutting edge. We're going to have a little bit of content. We're going to have a little bit of fun, develop a little sales messaging together. I'm going to give you a framework for that later on and give you a chance to try your hand at that. And then just give you all the information that we have that makes our clients successful. And so hold on just 1 second. Let's put up our PowerPoint. Hang on. Okay. So Lynn, if anybody's having problems seeing the screen, just let me know. But this is a little bit about me. As Lynn said, I've written a best-selling book called Biz Dev Done Right, which is about the blind spots in the sales process that keep everyone from the success that they should have. So if you aren't getting in as many doors as you think you should, or your company thinks you should, there's a problem in one or more of 5 key planks, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. But let's talk a little bit about some pandemic truths. And in fact, a month ago or 2 months ago, this slide said post-pandemic sales truths. But because there's a little bit of concern over where we are in the pandemic, it is really pandemic sales truths. What's affecting, well, one element that's affecting people's ability to get in new doors and have new meetings with important win decision makers is the fact that conferences, trade shows, and in-person networking has not come back quite the way people thought it would. Even once we get over people's fear about being in crowds, there's going to be a difference in the decision makers who are attending these in-person events. For example, we have a client who is a tier 2 accounting firm, and they are recommending to their clients that their executive level decision makers not attend conferences, trade shows, and in-person networking, not because of the fear of being sick, but because it's extra expense and time away from the office that doesn't need to happen, because now, since the pandemic, the executives can find the information they need exactly where they are, in their offices or their home offices. So what does that mean for all of us on this call? It means that we have to change what we're doing and be able to reach these decision makers where they are, give them not only content from a marketing perspective, but develop relationships from a sales perspective. Just a couple of emails from an email marketing campaign does not create a relationship. It may lay the foundation for awareness, but if you want a relationship with a senior level executive, there's going to need to be some conversation. That is one of the things that is working now, conversation. As we look at the data from our door openers, more meetings are being booked as a result of a conversation. Doesn't mean that the email is unimportant, just means that the conversation is incredibly important. And that is one of the things that sellers are reluctant to do, is to pick up the phone, whether it's because they don't like the phone or whether it's because they think the email will do the job and it's easier. But the people who are picking up the phone and speaking with their decision makers are getting meetings faster and better meetings than people who don't pursue prospects that way. So let's take a look at a couple of these pandemic truths. The first one is, not every seller who now has to sell virtually is successful doing so. Not every seller who now has to sell virtually is successful doing so. People really struggled in the beginning of the pandemic to make this switch. Fast forward a year and a half later, and some people have figured it out and other people are still struggling. However, not every seller who successfully switched to virtual selling has also successfully switched to virtual prospecting. Virtual prospecting is a little bit of a different animal. Without those conferences, trade shows, and in-person networking, how are sellers meeting prospects and getting those initial meetings? They're struggling. Well, it's the job of everybody on this call is to help the people whose responsibility it is to get these meetings to do a better job. That's exactly why we're here today. So let's ask a question. You guys can put your answers in the chat. But what issues or challenges are you or is your company facing in getting more new meetings with important win prospects? So start putting that in the chat. And while you do that, I'm going to define what an important win is. Not every prospect meeting, not every sale is an important win meeting or an important win sale. Only certain ones are. The definition of important win changed for many companies once they hit the pandemic. If their business was affected significantly by the pandemic, they may have been taking any sale and calling it a good sale. Now, fast forward to where we are. Do we need to go back, or do you need to go back to your companies and redefine what an important win sale is? Because if you're focused on only those important win prospects and you're gearing what you say and what you do in order to get those meetings, you're going to avoid a lot of the waste and inefficiencies of spending time on prospects that are really no longer important win prospects for you. One of the things you're going to see later is I'm recommending people add new metrics to how they view sales and whether you're getting the meetings with prospects that you want. One of them is what percentage of meetings are important win meetings, and another one is what percentage of deals won are from important win clients. That's a critical piece of this, important win. So Lynn, take a look in the chat and let me know what people are saying are some of the issues and challenges that they're facing.
So some of them came in super quick, which means these seems like maybe high levels of frustration that they can answer that quickly. So from some people, no responses to any kind of outreach that they've tried.
Yeah.
Frustration with email opens and email responses, and that's kind of a category right there. So I don't know if you want to address them at that, or if you want the other couple of ones that are here. You want
just lay them on me.
Okay, and the others are finding names of high-level contacts in other countries. For example, like China. How do we get to people in China? And because they're not using LinkedIn in the same way, how do we get there?
Right.
figuring out how to get to people that are from outside of your region. So maybe you're able to physically visit, but now they're in different time zones. So that's similar to the China question.
Okay. Okay, and those are the ones that we have. Well, what's really interesting about this open versus click through versus forward as we're looking at these emails. So you're talking about sequencing, and sequencing is different than relationship building. Sequencing is really part of a marketing initiative from my perspective. If you're looking at the opens don't really indicate anything. Now the marketers will probably want to challenge me on that, but from a sales perspective, it really doesn't indicate anything except for somebody opened it, but they may not have read it. It doesn't indicate interest. What indicates interest from a sales perspective is when they're clicking on a link or they're forwarding it to multiple people. That would capture attention, but you may not want to send the very first email with a link in it because of the filters that it's going to need to go through in order for someone to actually see it. But you want to pay more attention to the click-throughs and the forwards having to do with that. We'll talk a little bit about prospect list as we go forward. I'm going to incorporate some of the other challenges, including prospect silence. If I haven't answered this by the time we get to the end, please ask it in our Q&A. But when people come to us and they're asking us to get in more doors, this is kind of how they feel. They feel like they're on one side of this really big chasm and they need to get over here to the other side. But even if they were going to climb down into the chasm, climb up the other side, get all muddy and get over here, take a look at the lock on this door. It's like a vault. And I remember working with the artist when we put this together, and that was an office door to begin with. And I said, yeah, it's not that easy. And then he drew this steel trap door. And then there was just a little lock, like a regular office door. And I said, yeah, it's not that easy. And then he drew this vault-like lock. And I'm like, okay, we're getting there. And then I said to him, make the chasm bigger because this guy over here cannot take a running start and make it to the other side. It's not that easy. So when you're not getting in as many doors as you feel you should for the amount of time you're spending, there is a problem in one or more of 5 key planks. I'm going to share with you what they are, and then I'm going to go through each one. I'm going to give you the blind spots. I don't need to define it for you. You guys know what this is, but what I need to do is give you the blind spots that trip people up and cause them to get the plank wrong. Here are the planks. The first one is right target. The second one is right message. And I don't mean marketing messaging. I mean sales messaging. It's different. We're going to talk about that. Right answers for objections, not just any answer, but the right answer, the one that gets you to the next step. The right door opener. This is the person who's doing the work. Is that person the right person to be able to get to the decision maker and get an outcome? And right execution. Is it a phone call? Is it an email? What do you say on the 3rd call? What do you say on the 20th call? What do you say next year in order to take the conversation to a different level? You can't say or write the same thing to the same prospect more than once. You must deepen that relationship. And then another part of execution that most people get wrong is time. How much time are you spending pursuing this right group of prospects with the right message, right answer for objections, and having the right person do it? Is that right person spending enough time to make a difference? And there's a lot of areas where people fall down here, and I'm going to share an exercise with you as we get closer. But those are the 5 planks of door opening success. So let's say you have the right target. Notice the word right in front of every one of these, not just target, not just message, but right target. Right message. It's got to be right. People have a target. It's not necessarily the right one. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But let's say you have the right target, you have the right message, and you have the right answer for objections, but you don't have the right person doing the work. If that plank wasn't there, that bridge falls in and the doors stay closed. Every one of these has to be in place and working properly. So if you think about the times that you felt that you weren't getting in as many doors as you thought you should, which one of these planks might not have been what it needed to be, which prevented you from having greater success? You might have had some success, but it prevented you from having the success that you want. Let's take a look at target. This one is a big offender. In fact, if later on in the sales process, after you get in the door, after you submit a proposal, it's going nowhere, it gets stuck, a big offender is target. It was never the right prospect to begin with. Think about times when you got stuck in the sales process and you're watching it go through and then it's stuck. Think about who that person was. Was that person really the right person? Was that person really the right company? Or should it have been something else? Data is an interesting thing. People ask, how do I get the data? There's data from a variety of different places. But before we talk about where the data comes from, we have to talk about which data, because we can have a prospect list of 1,000 people. But when you're talking about email marketing, yeah, send it all out the door. But if you're talking about outreach, one-to-one personalized phone call, email, where you have to call them again next week and call them again the following week and call them again maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, well, you can't work with 1,000. Think about how much time it takes to work with a few. So we want to make a big world into a smaller world by using some strategic filters that we are focused on only those prospects who would feel urgency around meeting you. So aside from size of company, level of decision maker, geography, which you can get that information from places like Zoom Info, you can get it from your public library for free. If you have a library card, you can go online and you will often be able to access something called Info USA or Reference USA or some sort of database. Now, you may not be able to download like you can with a resource like Zoom Info, but you will be able to get some of the prospect information. There's also lists that are published that can come from industry conferences and places like that, where you can get the names of the people. You might be able to get the companies, but then you're going to have to research to get the contact information. And I've got lots of ways that you could do that if that's important to you. Let's talk about the filters, because you want to identify the filters in order to know which prospects to pursue. So here's how we lead our clients through this when we're getting the strategy ready for the door opener service. Aside from the size of company, level decision maker, all those good things, we want to know which groups of prospects are going to find you, your products, your services to be an obvious solution. Once they find out that you exist, they wouldn't wait another day before getting on a call and learning more about you. We want to cross those with those who will also willingly pay what you want to charge for your services. It's very rare that somebody crosses my desk wanting to be the low-cost solution. Usually people want to price on value. Well, guess what? Not every prospect out there is going to pay for value. Not every prospect out there will value value. So what if we were to find those prospects who would value value and be able to pay what you want to charge for your services? And then urgency. Not all prospects are going to feel urgency around meeting with you and taking a next step, but certain ones will for particular reasons. When the pandemic hit, we were looking for trigger events that were going on in industries and finding out which groups of prospects were experiencing trigger events so that our clients can set the group of prospects that they were targeting for only those people who were facing trigger events. Then the messaging, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the messaging was a slam dunk against the people who were facing trigger events. What's a trigger event? It could be anything that's happening that is facing a prospect that's going to cause that person to feel that that person needs to learn something more or take action. So for example, right now, think of what's going on in manufacturing and the supply chain upset. Well, if your prospects are facing anything to do with supply chain, labor shortage, something that's affecting their revenue, top line, something that's affecting their bottom line, anything that's affecting their raw materials, well, that may be a group of prospects that will feel more urgency around meeting you than just any prospects. I have lots of examples of that, but let's move on and think about how this affects the individual salespeople. Well, one of the things that I suggest that sales managers and business leaders do is to monitor the prospect lists that their sellers are pursuing. Same is true of marketing. How many prospects are you targeting from a marketing perspective that probably shouldn't be targeted? And what would happen if you were to take a more narrow group of people and say something more compelling to them? That might create more hand raisers. From a sales perspective, it will create more meetings. So let's take a look at this one. Sandy Cole has a check mark in every single one of these boxes. But Evan Hill, the second one, well, he's not going to be willing to pay. That's a B or a C or perhaps a D level priority. Let's not spend our time there. Let's spend our time with more people who look like Sandy Cole. All right, so that's one example of a way that sales leaders or business leaders can make sure that their sellers are spending time on important win prospects. Let's take a look at the right sales message. So the right sales message means that you're saying the right things to the right prospects at the right time. Sales is situational. So one of the things that many people get wrong, especially in marketing, is that they think that marketing messaging is the same as sales messaging, and it's not. It's different. Marketing messaging is meant for the masses. It's general in nature, whereas sales messaging is more specific. It's situational. The more specific you are when you're speaking to an individual, the more that person can see himself or herself in that message and say, oh yeah, that's me. I need to learn about that and I don't want to put it off. The mistakes that happen in marketing, and listen, I could tell you, I've been in consumer packaged goods brand management. I sat in that chair. I also sat in business development. So I understand that the marketers do a wonderful job setting strategy and are irritated with the salespeople who don't implement it. And I also understand that the salespeople who are responsible for closing sales in order to make their quotas, their commission, and put food on their table are going to do what they know is right to do in order to make that happen, whether or not it's in alignment with marketing strategy. And should it be that way? No, it should be that marketing and sales are working hand in hand. But the best way for marketers to really understand how to support salespeople is how is it? What can you do with your materials, your strategy to make it easier for prospects to say yes to your sellers? If you can support them in that way, they will follow your strategy all day long. Here's a couple of things I can tell you. First of all, the person with the best words wins. That's just hands down. If you have a company that's really awesome at what they do in the delivery and their clients love them and the prospects should totally be buying from them, but their sellers are not using words that are relevant and compelling in the situation for the individual prospect, they will lose to a company that is not as good, who has the right words. The person with the best words wins. So we have 2 trademarks in sales messaging. It's foundational for putting together the door opener program that's going to get the maximum number of the right doors open. And so from a marketing perspective, if marketing is giving sales the value proposition, let's say, well, value prop is a marketing term. It's not put in the format that is most effective for a seller to be able to use it to get a prospect to say yes. So there's a gully there between the value proposition and some of the marketing terms, even when there's a playbook, to what the salesperson actually needs. So if you're not giving the salesperson what he or she actually needs in order to get these doors open, the right phrasing, the right voicemails, not just any voicemail, but the right ones for the specific group of prospects, then you're leaving it to chance and having the seller just decide what messaging in what format he or she is going to use, which may or may not be right. So you can have the right target and the right message, but if it's put out there in the wrong way, the doors still stay closed. And here are a couple examples of that. So if you change the language, you will change the outcome. So a seller can say, I'll call you next week, versus a seller can say, how's Thursday at 10? So one of them is saying that there's going to be some follow-up. The other one nails the follow-up and gets the follow-up meeting. which one would be better? Obviously, the one that's revised. I'll follow up with you in 3 months, which many sellers might say if a prospect says, I'm not all that interested in what you're saying right now, call me another time. Well, they can say, I'll follow up with you in 3 months, but really what's going to change in 3 months? Well, let's ask that question. Here it is. What will be different in 3 months? I call this flip the switch language. So flip the switch language is something that you can say in the moment with the prospect that will cause a prospect to stop and reevaluate the answer. Oh, I don't need anything from you. They might say, you're right, nothing's going to be different in 3 months. We should have this conversation now. Now you're accelerating. That's what this language is designed to do. So that's just an example of phrasing. Here's an example of if you change the word, you can change the outcome. Because one of the things I recommend is that every single word should be working hard for you. And there are a lot of offenders here too. Here's an example of revising the word. You can say to a prospect, I'll show you how this is really going to help you. Or you can say, I'll prove how this is going to help you. See the difference? There's an intensity difference. Let's do another one. So our clients are all satisfied with our service versus our clients are grateful for our service. So there's a difference in the intensity there. What is going to land the way it needs to with your prospects and help them to understand why they shouldn't put off a meeting with you? So here's a formula to remember. Language plus delivery equals outcome. Language plus delivery equals outcome. It's what you say and how you say it that determines the result. Did anybody out there ever get a crappy voicemail from a seller who's trying to get a meeting with them? Well, I get them all the time. And a lot of times I play them during the seminars. And what they'll sound like is, hi, Mrs. Kopp, my name is Michael, and I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Like, you can't make this stuff up. People actually leave voicemails like this. Well, how likely is Michael going to be able to get a meeting with me as a decision maker? Not at all. So you can have the right sales messaging, but if it's not delivered properly, then you aren't going to get the outcome. How do you make sure that your sales messaging is delivered properly? Well, we do voicemail training. We have people leave voicemails, we pick them up. It's pretty eye-opening if you've never done it. We've got leaders on the phone, don't fire your salespeople if they leave a crappy voicemail, because that's one of the things that's easily fixed. While it's easy to fix it, it's hard to come back from it if you've already left it for a prospect. That is the impression the prospect is going to get. Here's another thing, avoid crappy emails. Don't bother trying to read this because your prospects won't either. There's way too much on this page. Stay away from salesy subject lines because they reek of cold calling and cold emailing. You want to make sure that if you're going to develop a relationship with someone, that they understand that you've thought about them. And there is a reason why you believe that their life would be better by meeting you or your company. Don't send an email like this, and don't bother reading it either. Okay, so we talked about right target and we talked about right message. Now let's talk about right answers for objections. So there's a company that we were working with, and they had salespeople all over the place. And I was having breakfast with one of them years ago before the pandemic, who was complaining to me that every time she faced a certain objection, she couldn't overcome it. And she didn't know what to do about it. Well, when I talked to the other salespeople on the team and I told them about the difficulties she was having with overcoming a particular objection, one of them said to me, oh, that objection? That one's easy. Anytime I face it, this is what I say. Well, what's the problem with that? The problem is only one person on their sales team knew the right answer for that objection, and everybody else didn't. So think about documenting your sales messaging. Think about documenting the answers for objections also, because when a seller goes into a performance moment, you only have one chance to get the right answer for the objection so you can move on. If you get all the way into this conversation with a prospect and you can't answer the objection, you don't get to go any further. A little different from when you're in a meeting and you have more time. That's different. When you're trying to get the meeting, you have one chance to get it right. I say that to our door openers all the time, like you only have one shot to get it right, so no pressure. But the best way to deal with this is to take it offline, out of a performance moment, make sure you have the right answers for objections. So that way, when the sellers are in a performance moment, they know what the right answers are and can easily and conversationally come out with them. I say there are 3 P's of objection answers: pre-think, prepare, and practice. If you can spend just a little bit of time before you go into a selling situation, you can pre-think probably 90% of the objections you're going to face. Well, if you can pre-think the objections, you can prepare the answers, but just having them written down is like taking a test and getting 50%. And what's 50% in school when you're taking a test? It's an F. So you need to prepare and practice. Practice until it doesn't even sound rehearsed. It sounds very conversational. Some of the best door openers are so fluid when they're on the phone with people. They're in the moment with the prospect and can pivot in one way and the next way to get an outcome, even when the outcome seems very difficult to get, or sometimes even that opportunity is under a rock. So we're going to do a little practicing of our own. I'm going to give you the framework. We call it the Kopp gap method of sales messaging. And this is the framework for the answer. I already have a vendor for that, or a solution for that. Thanks anyway. I'm sure many of you who are in sales situations, or if you're marketers, you're sending your sellers into those situations, are facing them having objections of, we already have a vendor for that, thanks anyway. We already have a solution for that, thanks anyway. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put up the framework. I'm going to give you an example, and then I'm going to give you about 2 to 2.5 minutes to work on one of your own so that you can develop the answer to the objection. We already have a vendor for that, thanks anyway. And I hope you'll play along with me. If we have time at the end, I will call on some people and Lynn will help me do it. Here's the framework. It's very simple. 3 sentences with fill in the blank. Anyone can, and you fill in the blank, but not everyone can, and you fill in the blank. For example, now this framework is something that goes into every single messaging document that we do in preparation for launching a door opener program, where our door opener is representing our clients out in the market and getting them these meetings. It's very powerful, and you can get to a really good place very quickly by putting your words into this framework. Here's an example. So there's a promotional products company that we work with. We work with them for a long time. And if you think about promotional products, there are a lot of people in that industry, and it's very hard to differentiate, although quite honestly, differentiation is a marketing term. In sales, nobody cares why you're different. Nobody cares why you're different. I know that's like ice water on top of everybody's heads, because people spend a lot of time trying to figure out why they're different, which may help you in marketing. But in sales, it's really about how can you be of more value than the other people who the prospect knows, or than doing nothing. How can you be of more value? It's not about different, because if you are different in a way that isn't of value, you lose and you don't get another chance. So you want to express why you are of more value. So the promotional products company, well, many people think the promotional products companies are the same. Even when they say how they're different, they're all different in the same way. So they're not expressing why they are of more value. So this is one of the things we came up with for them. Anybody can say they provide great customer service, but not everyone delivers on their promise. For example, we once chartered a plane at our expense to transport supplies on time. That's how we feel about customer service. So this was the gap message that this promotional products company came up with to be of more value in a way that was service related. So we're giving an example. Sales is often about specificity as opposed to generalizations. That is what helps. Now, a couple of elements of this, and then I'm going to put up your framework. I'm going to give you some ukulele music so you can have some music to write to, but anybody can say they can provide great customer service, but not everyone delivers on their promise. Now, the most important part about that second line is that when the prospect hears it, the prospect is going to nod along. If you think the prospect, when he or she hears your second line, will be confused or will not nod along, you've not nailed the second sentence. And then the for example has to be an example that the prospect can relate to, and it gives them something to know that the second sentence is real. Okay, so I'm going to put up the framework for you. Does everybody have a pen? Please write in the chat. If you have a pen, you're ready to go. You're going to do your gap messaging. I'm going to put it up, and here's your ukulele music. Everybody should be writing, filling in the blanks. Sometimes we do full sessions on this, and we have to share them and critique them. Today we're just going to be writing them. About 10 more seconds. Everybody finished up? Okay, so write in the chat, how was that for you? Was it easy? Was it hard? Did you come up with something that you like? I would like to see if somebody is brave enough to put their gap messaging in the chat. I'm going to give you a couple of pointers and answer in the chat if you like this exercise and if you're willing to put your gap messaging in. But one of the things that's really important after you put together your gap messaging and you fill in the blanks is to take all of these words and see if you can condense them. If you have 20 words, can you get it in 15? If you have 15, can you get it in 10? Because the more concise you are with your words, the easier it is for your prospect to understand what you're trying to communicate. Once you've reduced the number of words, then it's time to take a look at each word. Remember, show, prove, satisfied, grateful. Look at each word and decide, is this word working as hard for you as it should be? Is there a word with greater intensity that will land in a better way with the prospect in order for you to get your gap messaging nailed? Once you've nailed it, then it's time to take it for a test drive and see how it works. It's important for people to understand all the words and phrases you have in your gap message, because if they don't, then you lose that opportunity to answer the objection, I already have a vendor for that, thanks anyway. And you marketers, do the thinking for the salespeople. Don't leave it to chance that they're going to be able to get this right. It's actually a very different skill set I've learned over the years of owning this business, that people who are phenomenal sellers are not always great door openers. People who are great door openers are not always the people who are great at figuring out the exact right language. That's why in our company, we have messaging strategists who used to be door openers who are working with our door openers. And we separate those skills because, as I said, not every great door opener is a great messaging strategist. And that's one of the places you can really help, in your company. So we're going to move on. Lynn, did anybody write one in? Was anybody brave enough?
Yes, there was. There were two brave people in there. Thank you so much. So anyone can help you improve your marketing, but no one else can help you do this with the actual experts who develop the practices of B2B marketing. That looks like Rand.
That's right. And then
I'm thinking he's enjoying this presentation, right?
Yeah,
have this problem all the time.
That person will want to do is to add in the for example. And you said we had one more?
Yeah, anybody can store documents. It just moved for me because there's people typing in. Anybody can store documents, but not everyone can get you the documents back in a timely manner. For example, I went to my facility at midnight to pull a needed file and delivered it to an attorney who needed it for an 8 a.m. court date.
Awesome. I think that is a phenomenal gap message. So whether you're in marketing or you're in sales, the person who wrote that, make sure that anybody who's prospect facing in your company has access to that gap message. I have a feeling that if the prospects hear that, they will understand why you are of more value, not different, of more value than the competitors who are out there or than the person they're currently using, even if it's an internal solution. So nice job on that. All right, let's keep moving. So where are we? We talked about the right target. We talked about the right message. We talked about the right answers for objections. And now we're going to talk about the person who's doing the work, the right door opener. How do you make sure that the person who's doing the work is the exact right person for the job? Well, of course, one way is you could hire our company and we'll put one of our people on the case and we'll get those doors open. But if you are one of the people who is tasked with opening the doors here, or if you are hiring those people, or if you're in marketing and you work with those people, here are some important things that you need to know. First of all, does the person who's tasked with opening doors have the time to do it? If somebody is doing all of business development, which many companies have that structured, one seller does the door opening, they go on the meetings, they do the follow-up, they do the proposals, they follow up, they close. If they're really good at the door opening, then they're going to have a lot of people in the middle of their funnel. Door opening is at the top of the funnel. They'll have a lot of prospects in the middle to the bottom of their funnel. They'll be responsible for closing sales. So guess where their time is going to be spent? There. It's going to be spent on mid to bottom of funnel. And as they're moving those prospects to the bottom of the funnel, what happens to the top of the funnel? Empty. So if somebody is not constantly protecting the top of the funnel and feeding in new opportunities, it's going to create unnecessary peaks and valleys in revenue creation, something that you want to avoid. So do they have the time to do it? Do they have the talent to do it? Sometimes you might be targeting a C-level prospect and you might have somebody who just got out of college or somebody who doesn't have any business development experience. How likely is that person going to be able to open up a conversation with a CFO, hold their own and get an outcome? So some of that is experience and some of that could be talent. You might want to swim upstream and go after bigger prospects. Are you going to be able to do that with the people who are tasked with business development and door opening? And then the last is desire. This is kind of a surprise for a lot of people, but I know a lot of salespeople who have been successful in getting doors open, but would rather put a stick in their eye than do this job. And I think everybody can probably point to a couple of people that I'm describing, but if those people are tasked with business development, and even though they're really good at the door opening, they don't want to do it, it's torture for them and it's going to be torture for the company. And you're going to sit there and wonder, why isn't this working? So here's a blind spot that I write about in the book, Biz Dev Done Right, that most people know the difference between the hunters and the farmers. The farmers grow the business, the hunters find the business. But here's the blind spot, is that within the world of hunters, there are different kinds of hunters. There are many who are great at going on the meeting and closing the sale. In our world, we call them the closers, and not so many people who are really great at opening doors with new prospects and don't need to go to a conference or a trade show or leverage their network to do it. We call them the openers. It's very difficult to find openers. If you are hiring and you need somebody to open doors and you look for a closer, but you really needed an opener, that's going to be a very painful experience for everyone. So here are a couple different ways that you can solve that issue. You can either have the internal seller who does it all, that was the situation that I just described, or you can have internally somebody who's doing the opening who hands it off to somebody who goes on the meeting and closes it. Many companies will have an inside sales team and expect them to do that. But the inside sales team often is really good at following up on hand raisers from the email marketing and the social media campaigns. But that's very different than pursuing a net new prospect and saying something that's really relevant and creating that relationship. That's a very different ballgame. It's a different job. It's a different person. And many companies don't realize that. It's a blind spot. So they'll put their inside sellers on getting the high level meetings, and it doesn't always work right because were never the right people to begin with. So here's another option, is outsourcing the door opening part of the sales process. You can do that. There are companies out there that do that. They have a lot of different structures. In our company, we hire only senior level business developers who can get the door open at the executive level with prospects. People come to us when it's hard. Nobody comes to us for anything easy. After 22 years in business, I'm still waiting for that, but they tend to come to us when it's difficult. There are other companies that hire lower level people, and for some transactional sales to lower level prospects, they're perfect. But if you're looking to get in at the executive level to sell something big, or if it's a competitive environment, you're going to need the strategy that we talked about with the 5 planks, plus the right person to do the job. So here's a little chart. You guys can take a picture of this, or you can see it as to when it's appropriate to have a senior seller versus a junior seller. So you can see, like the third one down, if you want to get in at the executive level, it's really the senior seller who's going to be successful there. If you're looking to sell coffee to an office manager, that's a very transactional sale. You can have a junior seller there. Lots of mistakes.
Hey, folks, on the table that you should go ahead and say that again. So is there anything you want to hit from the last of the slide deck there, or summary?
Yeah, so can you see the slide deck?
It's coming.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to go over here. We got through most of the 5 planks. Of course, there's a direct correlation between time spent and success. So you're going to want to be mindful of how much time you're spending on business development, but never give up. This is one of my favorite quotes by Dan Kennedy. The difference between garbage and salad is timing. So hang in there and keep trying, because your competition won't. Here is the way you can reach me. And while you guys are either taking a picture of that or copying it down, Lynn, let's answer some of the questions.
Good. I have a couple of questions that I hope we can get to. So the first one is, yep, we understand the need for phone conversation, but how do you get them to take the phone conversation? Do you cold call? Do people answer a direct call these days?
Yeah, so people will answer a direct call these days. They're actually answering more calls now than they ever did before, because many people are still working from home. So office phones are rolling over to cell phones, and cell phone number.
Uh-oh. Okay, so the answer to that is yes, you should make that call and you should ask that question. And then and there's one more question, and we may not get to it because we're really glitchy today. And the question that Ola has here that I like too is, so is there seasonality in the corporate world? Like, when is the best time to reach out to your corporate clients and why? And Rand and I would say that we feel this the same way. Okay, it's catching itself up. Maybe not. And so I believe there's a question that we really want to have Karen answer for us if we can. Sorry, Karen, I'm going to turn off my video in hopes to get some bandwidth, but this other question is really important to us too. Is there seasonality in this corporate world? Like, is there a best time to reach somebody by phone in the corporate world? We feel like there might be because of holidays or of travel or vacations or time of day or any of those things. Is there any hints there? Oh, you're on mute.
Zoom's not our friend today. So I'm glad you asked that question because Thanksgiving is coming up right around the corner. People are more plugged in than they used to be when they were in their offices. So the seasonality of before is changing now. A lot of times people would think that after 2 o'clock on a Wednesday of Thanksgiving, nobody calls. Well, guess what? Your competition isn't calling, but the executives are still answering. Maybe not the lower level people, but the executives are answering. They're at their desks. They usually work a full day and they're plugged in and available. People are now available on weekends too. So how does that affect even Christmas time? Well, I would say if you stop calling people in the beginning of December, you're not going to have any meetings in the beginning of January. Keep calling them, emailing them, sending them LinkedIn, but a personal message. And then next week you send them something else. The week after that, you're sending them something else. Always reasons why it's important to have the meeting. Remember, if you want a meeting, you have to ask for one. A lot of people forget that part too. Any other questions, Lynn?
No, that's great. And we've hit the top of the hour. And so except for Zoom, this was fabulous. I think we all really enjoyed it. I'll remind everyone that this has been recorded even in 2 pieces. So we'll put it back together. And if you'd like to share that with others, let folks know that you saw that on ISBM. And do reach out to Karen if you have questions. I know she'd be happy to chat with you. And so thanks for everyone. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you in a few weeks.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.